Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast, the official podcast of humanity. We first received the endorsement of mankind, and then the women who love men came in after that, and that's how we became the official podcast of humanity. It was not a completely politically correct situation.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on that, Laura?
Well, have we averted being un-PC now, and we're in good standing all around?
I mean, this is not us being un-PC. It's kind of, humanity being un-PC. So anyway, humanity, we're here for you. Thank you for endorsing the podcast. Thank you for our listening audience. All right, today we're going to talk about the Catholic aesthetic and the evangelization of beauty, the problems with it, and actually why it came up recently. All right. Yeah. I have a favor to ask everyone. We've been having spam attacks, complaint attacks, shadow banning because of our stance against vampires. They've organized a movement against us. So if you want to support this anti-vampire movement, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast. If you want to support vampire hunters, we have the most new anti-vampire people ever. 15 people joined Simple House's Missionaries. Woo! So please donate to Simple House to help support this larger than ever growth. And I was thinking about that, like, they're not really vampire hunters, but it's like, as you spread the gospel and the love of Jesus Christ, you're kind of inculcating people against the demonic. I've been wondering lately about dad jokes. Mm-hmm. So I was with a guy who's also a dad, and he said like a very lame joke in front of his wife, and it was like clearly a dad joke. And I responded, positively. I did not laugh on the spot because, like all dad jokes, it was not actually funny. And it started to make me wonder, like, why dads do this.
They can't help themselves, though.
But had they been bachelors, they would not do this.
No.
But why do dads' sense of humor like go in this direction? My theory, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but my theory is that, like, my son years ago, not the oldest son, gave me a card and it just said, like, Dad, thank you for keeping us alive. And I was like, yes, this is what I do. I'm keeping, of all the cards, your card is now being kept because somehow this is what I think I'm doing all the time. That's never being said out loud. So I think there's this like weird, like burden holding of dads that make them say these really lame jokes that are like super obvious because something about their life is like this. There are dads listening right now who want to contribute to this and they don't know how to. So call the call-in line. The call-in line is 913-390-3672. And for 3 minutes, you can just tell me whatever you want to tell me, and it will probably make the podcast. All right. Do you have any thoughts on this? Dad jokes, vampires, Simple House growth?
It's exciting. We have, a lot of new missionaries. I think this year and last year, but I would say stood out to me a lot this year is... It seemed like a lot of the people that were applying to a Simple House were coming to the church, either converting or coming back to the church through a lot of different avenues. And I was encouraged by that because I think there's been other years in interviewing where, you have like just pretty similar interviews one after the other, and people that went to kind of some of the, a Benedictine or a Steubenville type, or maybe people that went to a state school and were active in some of the really good campus ministries, and those are great avenues. But I was just happy that it seems like there are avenues for people, even if you don't find yourself, in one of those.
So, last year was a record year for people coming into the church, like in America.
Yes, I saw that.
Our bishop talked about it. He said it was true in our diocese, and he said it's even more true in France. Like France has really got people coming into the church right now. We actually have a priest this year who went through RCIA at our parish 10 years ago. So he literally went through RCIA at our parish. He's been a priest for like about 2 or 3 months, and now he's stationed at the parish he went to RCIA at.
That's amazing.
Just kind of interesting. Yeah. And I wonder if this is affecting us at all. But I also just sense like like the Simple House year. I don't know that everyone thinks about it this way, but this is clearly the way we think about it at Simple House. This is like a monastic year, right? You're going to have a lot of silence. You're not going to have internet or TV or even radios playing often. And you're going to have a flip phone. You're just going to have a lot of time to kind of struggle through and work on your faith and prayer and read, and go to mass and the sacraments. But you're also then going to be doing this service work, which it's not service work, it's evangelization work, but it's charity to the poor, talking with people, doing Bible studies and things like this, right? And it's all like, it's as much a formation as it is an evangelization, and I think it's a powerful evangelization, but I think it's a very powerful formation. And sometimes you do best formating yourself when you're not putting yourself at the center of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's setting up to be a good year.
Yeah.
So please, if you're local to DC or KC, please visit our houses or attend our book club and encourage these new people.
Yeah.
All right. On to the first major topic. The Catholic aesthetic, the Catholic imagination, and the evangelization of beauty. And this topic kind of came to you and I because you brought something up. What did you see that was like interesting that started us rolling?
Yeah, I saw this video of a tattoo artist talking about the rise of the Catholic aesthetic in like the tattooing world. As a tattoo artist, she said, there's always been like crucifixes or Sacred Heart images in the tattoo world, but she's noticed a rise in people having these kind of symbolic Catholic tattoos, and these people might be Catholic or not Catholic getting them. And she herself was not Catholic, but it seems like she's sort of been at some level evangelized by the Catholic, what she's calling the Catholic aesthetic. And so it stood out to me that there's sort of a growing interest in the Catholic aesthetic, and that even people that aren't necessarily Catholic are attracted to this.
And just by divine providence or coincidence, that same week that you told me about this interesting idea, my priest had gone on a pilgrimage in our city where he was like going to walk 8 miles to some shrine. And he ended up in kind of the party district, like where tattoo artists would be. And he goes to the coffee shop and he's standing in line to get coffee, and someone taps him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, are you here to get a tattoo? A lot of priests have been coming by to get like a tattoo by these Palestinian tattoo artists." And he was telling this story in his homily. And I was just like, oh, that's really weird. You know what I mean? Like tatted up priests as a concept's kind of interesting, but also that there's like this moment in culture that this is happening.
I know lots of priests that have gotten tattoos in the last 10 years.
Really?
But yeah. But also, the Palestinian tattoos is something I heard about probably a couple of years ago. Pilgrims used to get like these tattoos in the Holy Land, and there are people going to the Holy Land for these tattoos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe that Gaza's a mess. They're coming to the U.S. Some of these tattoo artists, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I think people, I'm sorry, saying that they were going to the Holy Land for the tattoos maybe is not. Oh, there. That's like, right. I think they were going on pilgrimage and also getting these tattoos as, kind of like.
And you also mentioned that the famous Father Mike
Schmitz did a video about getting one of these tattoos. Father Mike Schmitz did.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of a bunch of stars aligning. So we started this topic, and then I like run downstairs because my mom, I don't run downstairs. I mosey on at my own leisure because my mom and my sister had gone to this Met exhibit in 2018 called Heavenly Bodies. That was about the Catholic imagination. And my mom really liked it. And she'd gotten the big coffee table books. Right. Yeah. And apparently this exhibit was done with the support of the Vatican, like the Sistine Chapel loaned them vestments and things for the exhibit. And I was just looking for connections between what was the Met going for and what are these tattoo artists doing, because they're not really talking about our faith and gospel as like a living religion. They're kind of talking about the aesthetic or the thing that kind of the fashion that's coming out of it. Right. And when you look at these, what the Met was saying at the time about it, they were talking about how Catholicism is so diverse in thought. Like we have all these like, there's Augustine and Thomas, and they actually mention all these people by name. And then they also mention the liberation theologians and all this stuff. That how do you say what such a pluralistic religion is actually about? And instead of saying the creed, they said the connecting thread is the Catholic imagination, and this aesthetic that's born out of it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that I agree with this thesis, but I was actually struck by how thoughtful they were, because I thought they might have been
like
even more trivial about the whole thing.
Disrespectful or trivial.
Right.
Yeah.
I was kind of like interested when they're like listing, like when the president of the Met's writing this, I'm sure he had help, but he's like writing who the most important theologians were in the 1700s. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Oh.
But it's just like, oh, this you're going deep here. You're doing a deep cut,
Right. So I think just as far as that being like the sort of a uniting thing in the church, right? I think both of you and I would disagree with that. But I think a thing that came out in the Met Gala was like a lot of like kind of high fashion designers like Coco Chanel and Yves Saint Laurent and Balenciaga and Valentino. Like these people are all Catholic. And I think it's interesting. It's like, why does the Catholic aesthetic spark this kind of imagination or this sort of project? And it is like the Catholic Church has embraced art and the physical world, as an expression of faith in the way that like Protestants haven't,
That's interesting to me, because Protestants at different points have been as rich or richer than Catholics, and yet they're not giving birth to the high fashion.
I think it depends what kind of Protestant you are. You might not even be allowed to have any kind of images,
Right. I thought it was interesting. Like if you look at like Americans, I think universally kind of like the Anglican aesthetic, where you have this like very ornate stone church with very ornate carved wood inside. Mm-hmm. And really, this is a pet theory of mine. I think I've said it once before in the podcast. Really, I started thinking about that. There's something like missing here. It's like they went to the nines on the stone and they totally outdid themselves on the wood, and there's no color. And then I started wondering about this. These are old Catholic churches, and they stripped them. Mm-hmm. That this would have been painted at one point, and then they took it off. And I think that's interesting as a Protestant aesthetic. It's a stripped down Catholic aesthetic.
There's a thing of, DC is not known for being the most fashionable city in America, but there's like a certain restrained neutral color. Like the wealthy woman here in DC is not flashy the way like in New York or LA or other cities,
Fashion Week is not coming to DC. We'll say that.
Yeah. No, but the aesthetic is restrained and low key and neutral.
Why'd you bring that up about DC?
Because the churches, I'm just like, it's like this, I like that the Catholic Church is not just like.
Man, I don't have this memory, because I think of the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception as glittery gold on all the domes. I think St. Matthew's Cathedral is to the nines. You know what I mean? Color and everything.
In a way, I like the more color, more richness, more beauty, more gold, as a sort of celebration, and not a necessarily more restrained, more controlled. So I'm not comparing the churches of DC. I'm comparing DC fashion, which is boring, neutral. I participate in it.
Yeah, I participate in it. So do I. I'm a Brooks Brothers guy. I'm a Protestant dressed guy. But by the way, I'm a shop Goodwill Brooks Brother guy. Never buy retail. Go to Goodwill and find your dress clothes. That's a hot tip, by the way. All right. So I also follow these thinkers who are atheists, who are they don't seem like they're converting. They're not hot on the road of conversion, at least yet, but they seem to love the Catholic aesthetic. And there was a HBO series, I think, called The Young Pope that came out years ago. And I watched just enough of it to know that it was not Christian, but it was like really rich with like cardinal robes and Vatican decor and a certain etherealness about it, right? And these thinkers that I was listening to were actually praising this as like just such a great, show and aesthetic, and they were really saying things like the Catholics know how to do it right, Well,
and I think it feels a little bit punk to some people because it's like the anti,
you're right.
Like sort of Costco. It's like
it is also supernatural. Like, if you want Neo in the Matrix to have some supernatural element, you put him in a cassock, or you do all types of Hollywood movies have priests walk through when they need supernatural credibility because it is evocative of that. Right.
Yeah. But I think also there might be just this appeal of, it's like you have the aesthetic has like all these, it appeals to the imagination. It appeals to our physical nature. Like it appeals to the eye. It sort of puts like a physical thing on the supernatural. And it's like people are living in a world that's very virtual. And I do think that is a reason why the church might be interesting to some people right now.
This is okay. You're kind of taking us a different direction, which I like. Part of the reason why the Catholics are open to the imagination is we're accepting the whole person. We're not shutting down the imagination, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why we're creating so much art is because we're not just an ethereal religion that's a religion of just ideas. We're a religion of the real world.
Yeah, body and soul.
Material things, body and soul, right? Yeah. All that, right? And so as people become divorced from the real world, maybe there's an additional pull in Catholicism because we're so enmeshed in it. Yeah. As people become digital people or digital nomads or whatever you want to say, or digital natives is a term, right? And the real world is like the foreign world, and the natural world to them is the digital world. They feel more at home on the internet than they do walking down the street, which I think is probably more widespread even amongst our audience than any of us want to admit. Maybe the Catholic Church's embracing of the material world has a special evangelization with that. I like that idea. I want to go somewhere else with this, though, before we leave this and kind of get deep into like, does beauty evangelize and how does it? The other thing I wanted to say was like, I can be very attracted to an aesthetic, but not want to join it. Like right now, there's some series about the Sandman, which I'm not really watching the series, but I like watching clips, on YouTube and stuff. Like, it'll give me like 60-second scene from this movie. Or this miniseries. And the miniseries I'm kind of interested in because I remember when I was a teenager, I think this stuff was a comic book series called The Sandman was coming up that people were kind of really impressed with as graphic novels. I guess like the literary quality almost they were impressed with, not just the flashy fight scenes or something. And it's such an enchanted world, and it's very goth. It's goth with some humor, and the Sandman, who is a perfect goth person, meets Satan, who's this like old woman. And it's just like this very interesting world. And I'm very much like, want more. I'm like, oh, show me a little bit more of that. That's so interesting. But I'm not like interested in it in any way that would lead to conversion. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think we have something going on in the Catholic Church, in addition to just beauty, that we've actually spun off an aesthetic that people who really aren't going to convert just kind of like playing with and spending time with.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's better to be interesting than boring.
Right.
It's also just not at the heart of the gospel, though, in some way.
Right. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this beauty as evangelization. And the first person who probably put this the best was Dostoevsky, who said, beauty will save the world. And then this is quoted by John Paul II. And it's like, so Dostoevsky is not even a Catholic. He's Orthodox and has other problems, but he's also this incredible, like prophetic person. And the Pope is quoting him as that, yes, this is true. Beauty will save the world. Right. And the question is, what does it mean? Right. And you could mean anything from like, I think the way to think about this is what's the minimalistic and what's the maximalistic argument here. Right. So the minimalistic argument would be that all that is beautiful points to God or can give you a reason to give thanks to God or somehow is helping you move you closer to God.
Well, I think it's kind of like it's a mirror or a participation of like God's beauty. But
at the end of the day, it has to move you closer to God, or maybe participate with God as relationship with God.
What do you mean it
has
to?
Well, I mean, for it to be evangelical, I think it has to move you closer to God.
Right.
And so, but that includes the Grand Canyon, Michelangelo, and a blade of grass. Yeah. All of which can be beautiful. Right. And the maximalistic way would be like, if we just show people more beauty, people will actually start converting and joining the faith, right? And that maybe as a church, we should focus on increasing the beauty we have in our churches and different things, because that's actually our evangelical edge. That would be the maximalist view of this argument.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this has annoyed me. And this annoys me for a couple reasons. I think it needs help. And
I think it needs help. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Right. I'm going to try to give it some help. I'm going to talk about a physicist. I'm going to talk about the Beatitudes, or beauty using gospel. So I heard a physicist say, this was an atheist, said that one of the ways you know when you're getting close to the solution to a physics problem is that your proof starts becoming beautiful. And I've experienced that just enough, like in mathematical proofs, that I felt what he's, I think, talking about, right? But I also, more than both of those spheres, find that in the gospel. Meaning, like, there are times when you realize a piece of information from God or a revelation that makes your soul make sense, that makes what you already intuitively know, like, kind of click into place. Not just rationally, but in this like beautiful way that like the world is now, like you're seeing the glory of God because the revelation has opened you and made sense of things for you. Right?
Yeah.
I think that beauty evangelizes. And I actually think that there's a lot of hard work to be done there. Like what I'm challenging our missionaries to do is usually the parts that you're most struggling with, like the seeming inconsistencies between reality, the church teaching, and your personal experience or your feelings, like these seeming contradictions are paradoxes, because you know it's true, but it doesn't feel true or seem to work or whatever. Work that out. And as you work that out, that's your evangelical edge, meaning like that often is that which will most help you help other people. Is you doing the hard work of working through that. Right.
I think part of the reason why you said, obviously, it's like we trying to follow the mandate of loving the poor, that's, in the Gospels, right? But why you called like that a formation, I think it's like this, like if your formation is sort of limited to a kind of bookish thought world, those ideas don't butt head with reality, and your formation is incomplete or maybe even weird or wrong.
Right. Like the simple idea of like, evangelizing with ideas would be just take the ideas of the catechism and just tell them to people and you're good. I mean, those are all true and great, right? But it turns out that you actually have to take these ideas and stew them and render them in your own life, and struggle with them and work on them. And then you can give them powerfully to other people who also are having the same problems that maybe you did, right? Which are usually the most important problems are not specific problems. The most important problems are the basic problems that all humans are facing. For evangelization, it's about the universal problems, not all your specific problems, although those can be interesting too in a lesser way. But there's something about this that to me is like the real hard work of evangelization. And there's a beauty there because you sense the beauty as you stew through and feel like God is showing you something through this. Yeah. Right. But that's not got a lot to do with paintings and art and things like this. And I think that art and paintings also can do this. Yeah. But it kind of requires the art and painting to be centered on gospel. And this does not diminish that the blade of grass and the Grand Canyon also evangelize. But it says that if you're going to spend your time working in the realm of beauty as evangelization, don't spend your time planting more grass or doing some simple little like, hey, I shined the candlestick on the altar. Spending your time figuring out how to render gospel as art is, I think, the key. And my example of this would be this. Take a classically beautiful person, someone like my wife. No, but someone who's got like perfect features, symmetry, whatever the beauty definition is, right? And you take a photo of this person, and then next to it, put a photo of a person who's kind of like capturing a beatitude, like blessed are those who mourn, right? And this person's not classically beautiful. They may be wrinkly and have a wart and whatever. They may be hunchbacked, right? But there's something like really special when you see something that really captures a truth, that is like one of these hidden truths, one of these gospel revelation truths that is more powerful than a classical beauty.
I don't know. It's like maybe what you are saying is like the beauty of redemption is more beautiful than like a perfect sort of human effort or something. But
the beauty of redemption is greater than the beauty of creation.
Yeah. That's
wild, but that's true.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
The thing I'm thinking of that kind of showed this to me was I went to college for a while at a school that was founded by an atheist. The money and funding behind it was by George Eastman of the Kodak Company. Right. And he made sure there was no religion practiced on campus. And after he died, so many decades later, the school tried to fix this. So it was like a fully atheistic school, right? But they tried to fix this by creating an interfaith chapel, and they did everything right. They gave it the pride of place on the campus. On one side was the river. On the other side was the courtyard that went all the way up to the main building on campus. They gave it the best location, and they followed all these like classical rules of kind of good architecture, like had very arched high ceilings, and they thought stained glass, obviously, but it needs to be for all religions. So we're not going to put Christ in the stained glass, but they had, before rainbow was co-opted by a certain movement, they did rainbow stained glass, like, in the 50s. Right. And you go in there and you're like, they really pulled out the stops and this just doesn't work.
You know what strikes me about this is that a college with a religious foundation might
do the same thing.
To try to fix their religious foundation.
No, but the problem is the college with the religious foundation won't even try for the classical beauty. They won't go for the high arches and the huge stained glass. They're trying to like outsmart that, Yeah. And somehow it's when the stained glass is capturing a scene from scripture, or when the wood carving is the Stations of the Cross. And this doesn't mean all of it has to be or anything. I'm not saying that all art needs to be religious art, but there's something about rendering, like, I think the greatest Last Supper to me is definitely the greatest Last Supper of the last 100+ years is by the weirdo, what's his name? He would not be offended by me calling him a weirdo. It's in DC. It's at the National Gallery of Art.
Dali? No.
Dali, Salvador Dali.
Yeah. Okay.
He also seems to paint John of the Cross's crucifix, in different dimensions and things. And it's kind of like his Last Supper is great. Apparently, by the way, the Last Supper at the National Galleries is hung in a stairwell. It's enormous, by the way. And it is the number one asked for thing at the information center. Where is Salvador Dali's Last Supper? And when I brought my family there last time we were in DC, and I go, you guys got to see this. We're just going here and we're going to go see the Last Supper. And there was this like African guy who showed up next to me. He goes, are you here just to see this? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I am too. All right. So something to Google if you don't know what I'm talking about. But
I have a little bit of like a different take or another take on the chapel or on the interfaith chapel or whatever. And I think it's like God is creator, God is creative. We're in the image of God. God is like the perfection of beauty. God made this beautiful world. And it's like we have the deep desire towards, creation that is just like being in the image of God and to make beautiful things and to admire beautiful things. And we are obviously all drawn to beautiful things. And I think the idea of like, I like the creation of beautiful things as like a thing that is like kind of deeply pouring forth from your soul, or an offering, or something you want to dedicate to God or whatever. But it's like the interfaith chapel is like not that, because it's not this deeply held belief, that it's not coming from a place like, it's like if you're making a Catholic church, or if you're making, it sort of erases the personal nature of the art. I just heard this, like the Psalms sung in the style of the blues, and I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And I listened to like a minute and I was like, something feels really fake here, and it was like technically perfect. But it was definitely AI after I kind of like looked around, but it was like technically right. I think it's like the technical perfection of this like chapel or lack of or whatever, like it wasn't like a sort of like creative loving thing flowing forth. It was sort of a correction to a political mistake,
You're kind of saying this does have a lot to do with AI, because AI is going to be able to figure out what humans find beautiful and figure out some rules or common threads between it and try to just create new beauty. But there's something like lust, right? A soul is lust, right? And like blues is 100% dependent on the soul of the singer. Like you're trying to feel it with the singer. And with this like sacred space issue, which is the interfaith chapel issue, it kind of probably was a sacred space if you had very little idea of the sacred. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the architect was very pleased. Like that he probably was not a very religious person, but it probably was a sacred space to him. But it wasn't like very developed. You almost have to like develop the sense of the sacred too. It's not just something that we all have,
Yeah. I mean, I would say if people were kind of going in there and having meaningful moments of quiet, then that kind of adds some. But I guess another pitfall, thinking that Notre Dame is more sacred than this like weird chapel with paint chipping and the nuns, the three nuns praying in there, and they have these gaudy fake plastic flowers, something in the front end, and they are praying there every day, and Jesus is in the tabernacle, and like the sacrifice of the mass is happening in that chapel every day, and it's a sacred place, and I think it's like thinking that the human adornment is what makes it sacred takes you off track a little bit.
Right. Why do I find this annoying, I think, for what you just said, but I've always found like that the idea that beauty will save the world feels to me like to be an abused statement, and it annoys me. Right. So it annoys me the same way this idea of like evangelize, always use words when necessary. It's a true statement. Like they're both really true statements, but they're abused statements. And so they're very annoying. Like I've just been in situations where people are doing zero like overt evangelization, and then they quote, evangelize, always use words when necessary. It's like you're copping. I mean, you're just like giving up. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're not using words when necessary. Let's be frank here. You're just not using words. Right. And with the beauty thing, I've seen people try to not deeply stew, not try to give birth to the gospel, but instead try to invest in beauty. Yeah. Right. And I've seen them do this like within the church setting, like investments and decorations and things like this that don't seem to be really incarnating the gospel into the art, But I've also seen this in the sense of like, hey, instead of like talking to these people, befriending these people and loving these people, let's just go sing Latin hymns in this depressed area. And this will cause conversion because beauty is evangelistic, right? And this Latin hymn is clearly beautiful. They've never heard it before. So this will be like really an evangelical outreach. And I can't even tell you it won't, because no one knows what will attract someone to the church totally, right? But I just feel like compared to all the other things you could be doing, this as your lead foot is wrong. I feel strongly that that's wrong. Yeah. There's something like silly about it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this stewing with the gospel and then giving birth in your interpersonal interactions with it is actually the right way. And thus I've always been annoyed by this beauty will save the world crowd, because I don't think by us all like patronizing the arts, that's what that's going to be the evangelical edge of the church. Not that it's not, it's just, Yeah.
I think it's, you make a beautiful home and a beautiful church as an offering to God, a meager offering. I don't care what church it is. If it's, like we can use art to sort of try to help ourselves like transcend the physical world. I think it's like you want to help cultivate like in my kids, I want to cultivate a sense of appreciation for the higher, more beautiful things, and God being the ultimate like perfection of beauty, but I guess I think maybe our annoyance is that a lot of people just get hung up on the beauty, and and there can be like a prissiness to it, or
yeah, I think the beauty can become a misfocus. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like the focus needs to be love, and then beauty serves it somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but love is beautiful though. So I want to change the subject on art for a second because this has bothered me. Do you need a scene do you need an art scene to have great art? That's the same thing as saying, do you need bad art to have great art? Like, do you need to have a bunch of independent rock bands competing and in their garages and doing small shows to end up with like a great rock band, you know? And do we all need to be trying our hand at painting for a genius of painting to arise? Do you know what I mean? Because I have a problem with this. Like if you were like filthy rich, you could just like support the arts. You could like build a museum. You could create a little artist colony. You could do whatever, right? But if you're just like someone who's not filthy rich, who might buy a piece of art or buy a ticket to something or whatever, is it actually like, if we want great art, do we need to like start supporting art scenes?
Yeah.
That's a question for you, Laura.
No, I don't think Michelangelo would have come about in a vacuum. You know, I think the art scene needed to exist for Michelangelo.
But
to
it means
be
like we have to create a living for some like average artists if we're going to have a living for some great artists. If we're going to find a great artist.
I think that there can be some average art that is like a real work of love and movement of the soul put down on whatever media, you know, that can speak to a person without being like, you know, one of the great masters or something.
Kind of the problem is that at this point with photography and print abilities and stuff, we can all have the greatest art. You know, like back when Michelangelo, there was no way to duplicate Michelangelo or send a photo of it or whatever. So like if you were a mediocre stone mason or stone carver or whatever in France, you could do something that it wouldn't be sitting next to Michelangelo, you know? Whereas like today, it's like if you give me a painting or something or an image that's just ho-hum, it can sit right next to the best stuff in the Louvre, because literally we can all just buy posters of the best stuff in the Louvre. Same with the audio recordings. You're competing against the greats.
I think I might disagree with you here, but I think that maybe it's kind of like, well, what is... Geez, I don't know. I feel like this is more like, you know, like a great chef might enjoy the fanciest meal in the world and might enjoy also the grandma's cooking, you know, at the, like, no, I don't want to say the grandma. I want to say just like the family meal, the kind of normal family meal can really hit the spot, you know, without it being the best lasagna.
We gave dinner to a priest and he was like, I really love these meals because they're the meals that I grew up with. They're just kind of ordinary and not over the top. And I'm like, thank you, Father.
Had you pulled out all the stops?
So, all right. Just a second.
Accidental backhanded
I know
compliment.
there's people, particularly on this last question, who are probably wanting to shout and get their idea in. Yeah. Call the number. The number is 913-390-3672. Tell us if you need to support bad art in order to get good art. All right.
I think you have a limited idea of what is good art. That's my take on it.
I'm thinking of something C.S. Lewis said once. He goes, there, many people say they love books. He says, but I truly love books and I truly love tea. He goes, when you love tea, there is no cup of tea too big.
Yeah.
And when you love books, he said, it means you can go to the dollar rack or to the clearance stuff out in front of the bookstore and find something that you want to read, right?
Yeah.
By that definition, I don't love art.
Yeah.
I love great art. I love great movies and I like great books. I don't like bad books. I don't like mediocre, you know? Yeah. So there's a few things in life where my love of it is so advanced that I love the mediocre of it, you know, but most of the time I kind of just love, I think most people are in the boat where you love the great stuff, as you should. I
want to push back though, because I have been to your home and you have some very beautiful pieces of art in your home, and
great
they are
art,
not all the great stuff.
Well, my wife decorates my home, so.
Well, she has great taste, but
my wife does.
I think there's like a lot of like paintings that have maybe been done by family members that I think are very beautiful and maybe even technically, but they're not, I don't know, they're not in the museum. So like, were they average? Were they excellent? Were they?
Well, there's going to be great art that doesn't get to museums. I mean, I always wonder about the people.
Do you think every piece of art in your home would be called great
museum quality?
Art?
No, but I like it. Yeah. Right.
But it's beautiful, and it creates a beautiful home.
I also probably couldn't have bought it though. Like it's like tattoos. I've always wondered, like, I'm not committed enough to any piece of artwork to want to say, I'll look at that for years. On my, you know what I mean? On my wall. Right. But you need it there, but I just can't commit. And same with tattoos. Like I can't get a tattoo because I'm like, in 1 week, I will be tired of that. You know what I mean? Like there will be many a day I look at that and I'm not interested. But
if it's the central singular piece of art on your wall, then it better be good. But I don't know. I think if there's a lot of artwork in your house, it's interesting to look at and it makes the home beautiful.
It does. Yeah, it does. My mom thinks about this a lot and she says that it adds depth to the room.
Your mom has incredible style. So and taste. Yeah.
All right. God bless you, Laura.
All right. You too, Clark.
All right. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. All right. Thank you for listening to Simpleton Podcast. Talk to you later. See you later, Laura.
Bye, Clark.
Peace.